workers about to toil here, and in doing that, building themselves. In many ways, the growth problems and the conservation problems of California are the same kind of problems that our country faces. To come here from the eastern United States and to realize what a booming country this really is, it gives us new encouragement to consider what actions we can take in the 60s to make life easier for those who are coming in the 70s. We surmount these growth problems only if we work together, if we engage in a great cooperative effort and learn to think of our resources in national terms. What this country needs is a broad new conservation effort worthy of the two Roosevelts, Theodore and Franklin, who lived in New York and who helped build the West. An effort to build up our resource heritage so that it will be available to those who come after us. We must step up our program to convert cheap fresh water from salt water. There is no scientific breakthrough, including the trip to the moon, that will mean more to the country which first is able to bring fresh water from salt water at a competitive rate. And all those people who live in deserts around the oceans of the world will look to the nation which first makes this significant breakthrough. And I'd like to have it the United States of America. And federal and the state governments must find ways to make outdoor recreation spots available, and to do it now. We're going to have 300 million people in another 40 years in this country. A lot of them are going to live in California, and a lot of them are going to live from Illinois east. And they're going to be working shorter hours as automation and technology comes along. And where are they going to spend their time? And what beaches are they going to visit? And what forests and parks are they going to see? Unless we take the steps today to make those facilities available to them, we will have a mass of cities which spread blight into the countryside and children growing up without ever seeing a natural grown tree. I think we ought to do it in the 1960s. And Theodore Roosevelt and Franklin Roosevelt helped do it for us. This is our task in the simplest terms, to strengthen the United States of America. And I'm confident that here in California, which looks to the future and not to the past, that you understand that lesson well. And I hope from this great project will spread a renewed sense of commitment by all the American people so that this country in 1962 can continue to move forward. Thank you.
Of 79 years.
The federal government is moving legislation to build Folsom South Canal, and the state and federal government as partners are building this great San Luis. Today, as when Shasta was built, there is a new urgency and vitality.
Limb of the great body in honest labor for the betterment of their fellow men, and let thy charity prevail in all the relations between labor and management and government, the better to effect an early and successful completion of this great benefit to mankind. a trip for any president or any member of the House or Senate or indeed any citizen, particularly those of us who live in the East, where water is everywhere and is a burden, to realize how very precious it is here in the western United States. And I'm also glad to come from Washington, where we are constantly struggling and seeing progress being made almost imperceptibly, to come and visit three areas, South Dakota, Colorado, and here, where progress is being made. And the important lesson in all of those projects is that progress isn't being made as a result of a sudden idea suddenly coming into fruition. This project, the Frying Pan, Arkansas, and the project in South Dakota represented 10, 20, and 30 years' effort of devoted citizens. And what this project also symbolizes is the state working with the federal government, the local communities working with the state. This program is unique in this area. There is no other project in the history of the United States where a state has put in such a large contribution to the development of its own resources and where the national government has joined with the state. This is a unique ceremony because this partnership is at the highest level. The amount of contribution of both is unique and special, and the benefits that will come from it are unique and special. And I think that those who took part in this and made it possible should feel the strongest sense of pride, because all those years when people in this state said it was impossible, and those who had water wanted to hug it and not make it available to all those who lived in dry areas. Many state administrations in California, including some of the most distinguished, wrestled with this problem. But I believe that all Californians will remember the leadership which your distinguished governor has given to this great cause of making water available to the people of this state, and I salute him for it. And the members of your congressional delegation who fought for this, and the members of the legislature, the House and the Senate here in California. This has brought your state to be the pioneer in the United States in the field of development and conservation of our natural resources. California in this area is number one. And it has helped make possible the San Luis Project, which joins all of us together as full and equal partners. By major new starts and by the level of investment, 1962 will be the banner year for reclamation. My colleague in the Congress, Governor Brown, Senator Kiko, Senator Engel, Congressman Biz Johnson, Senator Richards, Mr. Brody, Mrs. O'Neill, Mr. Mayor, Secretary Udall, Undersecretary Carr, ladies and gentlemen.
We can live in the same world as the Soviet Union and live at peace, whether we can both possess a hydrogen capacity and live at peace. I want to say that I think that there are some things that we can do. I don't think that there is a war party and a peace party, a party of appeasement, and a party that desires to be tough with the Russians. I think all Americans, whether they're Republicans or Democrats, share a common desire to live at peace and protect the security of the United States. And Wilson as a hope for people around the world and not as a matter of indifference to them. A Gallup poll taken some months ago in 10 countries around the world, when they were asked which country they thought would be first, militarily and scientifically in 1970, the United States or the Soviet Union, a majority in all those countries said the Soviet Union would. What's happened to this country that we've lost our image? They don't quote Lincoln or Jefferson or Roosevelt or Stevenson today. They look to the east. I think they should look to us again. I ask your help in this campaign.
wilderness and the parched land shall be glad, and the desert shall rejoice and blossom as the rose. It shall blossom abundantly and rejoice, even with joy and singing. In the San Joaquin Valley, it was both a beginning and a climax. The beginning of construction of the over $500 million San Luis Dam and irrigation project, and the culminating story.
Good evening. This reporter has been on the job a number of years now.
Life and
One of the things we can do is make it possible for them to work in these parks and in conservation and preventing fires and pollution and all the rest in building more.
you behind you and across the valley. Where does this blast? Beyond that?
Ready? One,
Dedication, you got a job. Congratulations. More to come. Hollywood, huh? That's where the dam goes, right along there, huh?
That is the axis of the San Luis Dam.
Well, you flew up the valley.
You now see a helicopter flying, dropping smoke, which will be at the height of the dam itself. That is the crest height.
When were you a movie director? High water line. That's the high water line. Thank you. That's the height of the dam. That's the high water line. Are you going to give these to us afterwards? I mean, for a memento? Are they gold plated or solid?
Ladies and gentlemen, by way of an oversight, I neglected to pay tribute to the committee which made this possible. If I may name them to you now, Mr. Kenneth Anderson of Boosters for San Luis, Mr. A.S. Balthazar of the City of Gustine, Mary Brooker of Huron Community Chamber of Commerce, H.M. Clements, Mayor of Dos Palos, Albert Henley,
say that when welfare programs are administered in such a way that it becomes more profitable for a man not to work than to work, then something's wrong. I say that when welfare programs are administered in a way when a man will find that he's better off if he deserts his family than if he stays with it, there's something wrong. I think we got to change that, and I'm going to change it through better welfare administration in the state of California.
St. Louis will bring immense returns to both the state and the nation. It will serve as a water bank in the California Water Project, a system greater in scope than that of the Tennessee Valley Authority. And it will be the core of the complex of dams and reservoirs and aqueducts that will pour $12 billion in new income and $35 billion in new investment in the next 25 years. This dedication also highlights a resurgence of activity in water development everywhere in this state. Wherever you look, you can see new construction for flood control, for power, for irrigation, for industry, to provide water for many of our fast-growing cities. Private and public utilities are building power-producing systems. Local districts are putting up dams for irrigation. The state has embarked on its great project to protect the North from floods and to bring the water into the deficient areas of the valley and the urban South. In water development throughout this state. I am honored indeed in being asked to participate on this epical and historic occasion and pay tribute to one who is no longer with us, but whose spirit is alive in the minds and hearts of many who are present and who are saying to themselves and each other, if only Jack O'Neill could have been spared to be here today. This is not the time or place to eulogize the life, character, and accomplishments of Jack O'Neill. My purpose is only to record that these ceremonies mark the fulfillment of a dream long cherished by Jack O'Neill to ensure for future generations a supplemental supply of water to the rich farmlands of this area in order that they might more abundantly produce food and fiber to supply the constantly increasing needs of our nation and other countries whose destiny is linked with ours. Although of Canadian birth, his devotion was to this country and his genius was to enlist the support and cooperation of others in promoting the accomplishment in the public interest of a worthy goal. He was imbued with the true spirit of the American pioneer, and that spirit in Jack O'Neill found the San Joaquin Valley an hospitable arena in which to live, to achieve, and to serve his fellow men.
You have to remember that the area to be served by at least the federal portion and to a large extent the state portion of this project is an area which is already developed. As a matter of fact, in the 500,000 acres to be served on the west side of the San Joaquin Valley from the federal portion of this project, it is about 90% developed. So it's a matter of sustaining an existing agricultural economy. And what has happened has been that the groundwaters have been mined. That's the only source of water they have for the production of crops in that area. And they have to keep going lower and lower for this water, and as they go lower, it becomes more costly, so it becomes economically, if not physically, unavailable. Secondly, they have the problem of the quality of the water as you go to greater depth. So we need this additional surface supply in order to keep this agricultural area, which has some of the richest land this side of the Nile, in production. And it's in the interest of the state of California and the nation that this be done. Secondly, insofar as the state project is concerned, California is growing about the rate of 1,500 people per day. Now, these people have to have water supplies for themselves and for the industries that support them. And this is why the state portion of the project is important to this entire picture. And that's the need for it. The need to sustain our agricultural economy and to provide water for people who are coming to our state.
The great San Luis project has a rather long and complicated history. That history, of course, started back prior to my service in the Congress. The original bills were introduced way back in the 40s. Now, my first bill was introduced in 1955, immediately after going to Congress, and identical bills were put in by then Congressman Clara Ingle, who is now our United States Senator. The complicating factors, of course, were caused by many interests, of course, that were concerned in the area with reference to the uses of the water as well as uses of the reservoir sites. Now, of course, in the United States Congress, it became necessary to sell the members of Congress on the engineering and the economic feasibility of the project, because this is vital and important. Here was a project that was going to cost the taxpayers of America ultimately something like $500 million. And so the hearings then started in the 84th Congress. We continued hearings, moved a little closer in the 85th Congress, and finally, of course, we were able to pull together the many divergent forces and be able finally to sell at least to a majority of the members of the Congress of the United States and the United States Senate and the President the feasibility of the program and get the bill passed in the 86th Congress and get this great project authorized.
I share the pride of all the people in California in the commencement of construction of the gigantic San Luis Reservoir at Los Banos in our state of California. This, in very truth, is a people's project. It is not political in nature. Representatives of both the Republican Party and the Democratic Party contributed to its final fruition. The San Luis Reservoir represents a $400 million undertaking. It will bring additional waters to the people in the entire Fresno area on the west side to an extent of about 500,000 acres. Equally important, it will be a storage reservoir for the state of California's Feather River project, which will bring water eventually through the Tehachapi Mountains into the great far-flung Southern California area. Thus, it represents an undertaking joined in by both the state government and the federal government to satisfy the needs of the people of our state as our population continues to increase at such a prodigious rate. In the last analysis, it is a good investment for both the state and the federal government because the people who use the benefits of the San Luis project will pay for the water and therefore pay for the project itself. I look forward, as a United States Senator, to continued assistance to the people of California by additional reclamation projects in the future.
Ralph, what are these steps that will have to be taken by the people on the west side to make use of this water that will be made available by the San Luis project?
Well, Wally, some of the steps have already been taken some 20 years ago when the people on the west side of the San Joaquin Valley got together to urge the federal government to make studies and to come on with the project when they got it authorized by the Congress. And then more recently, in 1952, the Westlands Water District was formed, comprising about 400,000 acres of land on the west side of the valley, extending from about 12 or 15 miles south of Los Banos all the way down to Kettleman City, a strip about 15 miles wide. These are two very significant and important steps. Then, in addition to that, we now have to prepare to be able to utilize this water by building a local distribution system within our district, which will run in the neighborhood of some $100 million of additional construction money to be invested in the project. The farmers are going to have to adapt their own distribution systems, being dependent upon an imported supply of water rather than entirely upon wells, as they are now doing. So these are the physical steps that have to be taken in this kind of situation.
What will the impact of the project be from the community and agricultural standpoints on the west side?
Well, there will be a population impact. There will be an impact of the matter of increased income to the area. For example, and during the construction period also. For example, it's estimated that during the annual income during the period after 1985, that the value of crops and livestock produced in the state and federal portions of this project would be somewhere in the neighborhood of $400 million. This means that the wages of agricultural workers, who would amount to about 80,000 additional agricultural workers annually, would amount to about 90,000, or 150 million, I beg your pardon, dollars annually. The net personal income of farm owners would be somewhere in the neighborhood of $100 million annually. This means that it would enable them to buy such items as new and used cars in the amount of $100 million annually. Farm implements, about $30 million annually. It's this kind of impact that as to the existence of the water, which is going to be imported, and what impact that's going to have on the economy itself. But during the construction period, it's estimated that there'd be some 20,000 workers on this project who will receive about 40% of the total cost of the project in salaries and wages. This means something like $200 million in terms of annual income. Now, every construction worker requires from 2 to 4 jobs to support him, so that this is the immediate effect on this area here in terms of the construction program itself, and it will result in a population increase in the valley itself of some 100,000 people.
Well, of course, the great San Luis project is now under construction, but we must look ahead to the needs of our valley and of our state, looking ahead into 1980 and to the year 2000. Now, there are a number of important projects that we must secure authorization for. Immediately in the future, and in fact I would hope this session, we have a hidden dam on the Fresno River to be built by the Corps of Engineers for flood control and also some water conservation benefits. We have Buchanan on the Chowchilla River, again an important project and one which I would hope would be authorized in an omnibus flood control bill this year. Then the next thing in the category, and certainly is number one with a great many people up and down the valley, is the Folsom South program as it ties in then to the east side canals, which will be, of course, an extension of Folsom South. This, to me, is the next big federal program because it's essential that we get an additional amount of water into the east side of our great valley. It's my opinion that we're talking possibly 2, possibly 3 years ahead with reference to authorization of the east side canals. We hope sooner. But again, we are going to have to face some of the same problems in authorization that we faced on San Luis. This is convincing the 435 members of Congress of their economic and engineering feasibility and their good to America and the necessity of having these great projects.